Hi students, in this example I will be doing the cash flow statement. This is the June 2023 paper and this is to help you to prepare for your upcoming June exam. Now this is a good question because it incorporates the retained income note as well as financial indicators. Okay, so if you pay attention, I will show you how to attempt this in the exam. Now, please forgive me for the way that I put the paper. I hope that you can see, but if not, just zoom in. Okay, so it says you are provided with information extracted from the records of Sivukile Limited for the financial year ended 28th of Feb 2023. Okay, so you have to prepare the retained income note on the 28th of Feb, and that's for 8 marks. Then it says complete the cash flow statement for the year ended, and that's for 26 marks. It says some of the figures are entered in the answer book where notes are not required, show all working. Then it goes on to say calculate the following for the year ended the 28th of Feb 2023, the debt to equity ratio and the net asset value. Let's look at the information that we are given. So it says extract from the income statement for the year ended 28th of Feb 2023. We got the depreciation, the interest expense. Okay, we know that this will be interest paid from the format of the cash flow. And we can put brackets there to remind ourselves that when we start writing, we need to take this figure 52,000 and put it under interest paid. Then we have the net profit before tax and the net profit after tax. Okay, if you work out the difference between these two, it will give you the income tax for the year. Then we have figures obtained from the balance sheet and notes section. Right, we have last year, which was 2023, and this year, sorry, we have last year, which is 2022, and this year, which is 2023. And if you turn over the page, we have additional information. So it says the share capital. It says 400,000 shares was issued on the 28th of Feb 2022, right? So 400,000 shares was issued on the 28th of Feb 2022. Now, what do you notice about the 28th of Feb 2022? This is literally one day before the beginning of my financial year. When did my financial year begin? On the 1st of March 2022. So it's telling me how many shares I had at the beginning of the year. Then it says on the 1st of March 2022, the company repurchased 120,000 shares from a dissatisfied shareholder at 4.50 each. Okay. Then it goes on to say on the 1st of September 2022, an additional 234,920 shares were issued at 5 Rand per share. Okay, so we're gonna obviously use this information to do the retained income note, and then we're gonna use some of this information to do the ordinary share capital from we're going to use this to do the ordinary share capital components in the cash flow. Then let's go on to D. It says extensions to the existing buildings were completed during the financial year. If they are telling you extensions to the existing building were completed, it is the same thing as saying that we have purchased fixed assets, okay? It is the exact same thing. Right, and then it goes on to say fixed assets were sold at a carrying value, very important, of 180,000 during the financial year. So if fixed asset was sold, this is our disposal at carrying value. Okay, then it goes on to say the dividends, an interim dividend of 78,000 was paid on the 30th of September 2022. Then the final dividend was declared on the 28th of Feb 2023. Okay, right, it was paid. Okay, now that I've read my entire question and I know what's going on, I'm going to go to my answer booklet. Now, if you look at the answer booklet, do you see that they gave you the retained income, they gave you the cash flow, but they never fill in the entire format. the most important thing that you need to do is to know the format, okay? So even before you attempt this question, if you do not know the format, go and learn the format first and then come and attempt it. Okay, so they ask us to do the retained income note. Now, the retained income note is not part of the cash flow, but most of the time they like to combine the retained income note and the ordinary share capital note with a cash flow question. So please know the format. They will definitely test this in the exam. Okay, so it says the retained income note on the 28th of Feb 2023. I'm going to start by filling in my format first. So it says balance at the beginning. All right, balance at the beginning on the 1st of the 3rd month 2022, which is when my financial year began. Now remember that if they say that my financial year was on the if they say that my financial year was on the 28th of Feb 2023, then the year that the financial year began is always 1 month after 1 year before. Let me try to get it in focus. Okay, so 1 month after Feb is March, and 1 year before 2023 is 2022, and obviously the year began on the 1st. So now you know how to get the financial year even if you didn't. Right, then it's always net profit after, and I'm putting this after in brackets, not in brackets, in capital letters, for you to remember that you always take the net profit figure after tax. Then we have the repurchase. Okay, so we're going to say repurchase of, from the information we know that we repurchased 120,000 shares at, and I'm going to leave this here. Please note that for the retained income, we multiply the repurchase of 120,000 shares by the price that we actually paid minus the average price. Okay, we don't use the average price only, we don't use the price paid only, we work out the difference between the two and then we multiply it. Dividends, so the dividends is interim, or another word for interim is paid, and then the dividends that was declared, or another word for declared, is final, and then you get the balance at the end on the 28th of the 2nd month 2023. Okay, so if I go to the extract from the balance sheet, okay, you will find retained income and you will fill in the figures that you have. So we don't have a figure for the year end, but we do have a figure for the beginning of the year, right? Obviously the year before will be the beginning and the year after will be the end. So we have 328,000 here. So I'm going to say 328,000. Then my net profit after tax, we get this from where? The extract from the income statement. Okay, it will the net profit after tax will always be the last line of your income statement, and that is 264,480. So I'm going to say 264,480. Then I'm going to work out the repurchase at the price paid minus the average price. Okay, now something that will really benefit you if you struggle to find the repurchase is to do a timeline. Okay, so let me do a timeline on my question paper. So my year began on the 1st of March 2022. It ended on the 28th of Feb 2023. Then on the 1st of March, I had 400,000 shares, okay? And then on the 1st of March 2022, the same day, I repurchased 120,000, okay? Then it says September is here. On the 1st of September 2022, I purchased an additional shares of 234,920 at 5 Rand. Okay, now a tip, if you are doing a cash flow question like this, right, and they ask you for the retained income and then later on they ask you to do the cash flow statement itself, it will save you time if you quickly do the ordinary share capital note very roughly, just as rough work, and I will tell you why in a few minutes. So let's do the ordinary share capital note. So I have 400,000 units on this side, or 400,000 shares, and I'm just going to write in short form at the beginning of the year, okay? And if I go to my ordinary share capital, it's given to me, it's 1,680,000. Okay, then after that it says that I repurchased 120,000 shares, okay, always in brackets because I repurchased at, and remember for the ordinary share capital I will always use the average price, okay? Now to get the average price, do you guys see that on the same day as the beginning of the year, the 1st of the 3rd month 2022 and the 1st of the 3rd month 2022, when the repurchase has taken place, only 400,000 shares was issued, right? So to get the average price, I take 1,680,000, the Rand value, over the number of units, right? That is equal to my average price. Sorry that it is squashed up there. Over 400,000. Put this into my calculator. 1,680,000 divided by 400,000, and I'm going to get 4.20 Rand. Okay, repurchased at 4.20 Rand. So I'll take 120 times 4.20, and that's 504. Okay, then on the 1st of the 9th month 2022, right, I issued additional shares at 5 Rand. So I'm going to take 234,920 times 5, and I'm going to get 117,600. Okay, and then the last thing is the 28th of the 2nd month 2023 would be the balance at the end. Okay, now I don't necessarily need to get this balance because I am doing the cash flow. It's just these 3 parts here that will really help you. So please remember that on this side of the note we record the number of shares. On this side of the note we record the Rand value. Okay, okay, and this is just rough work that will help me later on. So I have already worked out the average price here from the ordinary share capital note. I repurchased 120,000 at 4.20, and then here is my working out for my average price. Okay, now for those of you who don't know how to work out the average price, please note that you are going to take the date that the repurchase took place. So the date that the repurchase took place was on the 1st of the third month, 2022. And then you're going to ask yourself, on this date, how many shares was in issue and at what value? So we know on the 1st of the third month, there was 400,000 shares. Even from my timeline, there's 400,000 shares, and the value I got from my trial balance, the value of these 400,000 shares in total was 1,680,000. So if I take the rand value over the number of units, I get 4.20, and that is my average price. Then I'm going to go here to repurchase of 120,000 shares. Now remember, oh sorry, you didn't see that. So it's repurchase of 120,000 shares. Please remember that for retained income, this is the formula that I use. It's the price that I paid minus the average price. So what price did I pay? How much of money left my bank account? 4.50. That is the price that I paid per share. So I'm going to say 4.50 minus the average price of 4.20. Okay, so I suggest you get this answer first and then you multiply it by 120,000. 4.50 minus 4.20 is 30 cents, and then you're going to multiply by 120,000, and then you are going to get 36,000. Okay, right, let's work out the dividends now. So this dividends is the dividends for the end of the current financial year. So the interim paid, we're gonna find out how much of dividends did we pay them. Now in the information it says an interim dividend of 78,000 was paid on the 30th of September. That's very simple. All we're gonna do is take our 78,000 and put it there, and dividends is always in brackets. Okay, then our declared or final, right? Now, please note that this in the trial balance, not in the trial balance, but in the statement of financial position, is referred to as shareholders for dividends. Okay. So if I go to my shareholders for dividends, remember that it is a current liability because I will need to pay this dividend over to my shareholders. So if I go to the current year, my shareholders for dividends is sitting at 102,000. Okay, and then I'm going to add both of my dividends together to get my total dividends for the year. And this is 180,000, and the total amount will be in brackets. And then to get my balance at the end, very simply, I'm just going to go with my calculator, and as I see the numbers on my paper, I will put it into my calculator. Please do not double count here. The interim plus the final makes up the total, right? So you will stop at this point here to get the balance at the end. So we're going to say 328,000 plus 264 for 80 minus 36,000 minus 180,000, and I'm going to get 376 for 80. Okay, now let me show you where your marks lies, because that's also very important. You're going to get a mark here, a mark here, you're going to get 2 marks here, an operation mark here for adding both of these figures, and an operation mark here for the numbers that you got, right? And then that will give you 8 marks. Not for the numbers that you got actually, but for the operation of getting the balance at the end. Okay, those were very easy marks, and I hope that you learned something valuable. Now, let's move on to the cash flow statement for the year ended. Now, the very first thing before I go and try and input figures is I'm going to complete this entire format, and then I'm going to start with my cash flow statement. So it says interest paid. We know the next thing is tax paid, and then dividends paid. Okay, now, the cash flow from investing activities, the only two things that I can invest in, right? If you look at your balance sheet under non-current assets, the only thing that I can invest in is fixed asset. So either I purchased a fixed asset, or I sold or I disposed of a fixed asset, and then an increase or decrease in my financial assets. This part here of the balance sheet will go to my investing activities. Okay, right. So let me complete the formula or the format. I will say proceeds from fixed asset if I got rid of an asset. Now, this proceeds, please remember, as a clue, disposal at carrying value. Okay, then the next thing is if I purchased a fixed asset, purchase of fixed assets, and then I will say change in financial assets if my fixed deposit increased or decreased depending. And then cash flow from financing activities. Now listen, a clue here is that you can only fund your business by two things. Okay, you can fund it by debt, or you can fund it by equity. So if you fund it by debt, right, you're going to look at whether your loan increased or decreased. If you fund it by equity, you're going to look if you issued additional shares or you repurchased shares. Okay, so for financing, please just remember the debt to equity ratio, right? As a clue, if you can't remember the debt to equity ratio, you can either fund your business by debt, or you can fund it by equity. If you fund it by debt, we're going to look at the loan. If you fund it by equity, you're going to look at the repurchase of shares, or you and not or and you will look at the additional shares issued, right? That is just a tip for you to remember. So the first thing we can say is changes in loan, and then we can say additional shares issued, and then repurchase of shares. Okay, now that I'm done, I'm going to fill in the figures. Now, the advice that I would give you is try to fill the cash flow statement from the bottom going up. So most students have a problem with the cash and cash equivalents, so leave that for last. But try to go from financing, then to investing, then to cash flow from operations, because you want to increase your earn rate. Your earn rate means that you want to get marks faster. Okay, now because we did the retained income note and we did our ordinary share capital note as rough work, it is so simple for me to just go and input figures. Okay, so let me show you how. look at cash flow from financing activities. It says additional shares issued. Did we issue additional shares? Yes, we did. It says on the 1st of September, we issued additional shares at 5 Rand. Here is my working out here that I did my rough work on previously. So all I'm going to do is take that same answer and put it in my statement. So I'm going to say, I'm going to show my work it out in brackets, 234,920 times 5, okay? And that is going to be 1,174,600. Now remember that if we issued additional shares, okay? Oh, sorry, I didn't write proceeds. Proceeds, I'm not sure if you can see that. Proceeds from, sorry, okay, proceeds from additional shares issued. Please remember to write proceeds. All I did was take my answer and put it there. Then repurchase of shares, okay? So the repurchase of shares, it is the actual amount of money that left your bank account. Remember that this entire cash flow statement is about the money that came in and the money that left, okay? So how much of money left? It says on the 1st of March, we repurchased 120,000 shares at 4.50 per share. So we're going to say 120,000 times 4.50. Now, if money left my account to purchase this, it will be a outflow automatically, okay? So if I take 120,000 times 4.50, I'm going to get 540,000. Now, something that I wanted to show you is a check would be if you take your average price and then if you take the excess over the average from the retained income, so 4.50 minus 4.20 is 30 cents. Okay, now just quickly a check to know that you're on the right path is that in the retained income, we said 120,000 shares was purchased, and the excess, the 4.50 minus the 4.20, 120 times 0.3 is equal to 36,000. And then 120,000 times, now I'm going to take the ordinary share capital amount, which is only the average price, and we worked out the average price to be 4.20 of 504,000. When I add these two together, I get 504,000 plus 36,000. I get 540,000. And 120,000 plus 4.50 is equal, sorry, times 4.50 is equal to 540,000. The excess over the average and the average from the retained income and then from the ordinary share capital. So that's how you know you're on the right track, okay? This will also equal to 4.50. Now this is just a check, just if you're unsure, right? Obviously you are limited in the exam with time, but it will help you to put things into perspective if you are confused, okay? Right, and then let's go to our changes in loan. So loan, I'm going to go to non-current liabilities, because remember that my non-current liabilities refers to my debt and my debt refers to my loan amount. Okay, so let's look at the change. It went from 800,000 to 500,000. So in order for my loan to change from 800,000 to 500,000, it must mean that I paid 300,000. I paid 300,000 towards the loan. Now, what can I get? I can get cash flow from financing activities. And as you see these three figures in your paper, you put it into your calculator. So I'm going to say minus 300,000 plus 1,174,600 minus 540,000. And I'm going to get 334,600. Okay, then cash flow from investing activities. Okay, so it's proceeds from fixed assets, purchase of fixed assets, change in financial assets. So let's do the easiest one of all, the change in financial assets. Now the change in financial assets, where am I going to find this? Okay, so this is under non-current assets in my statement of financial position. Do you guys see there financial assets? Now sometimes it will just say fixed deposit. Please note that it is the same thing, just compare the two figures. So it went from 230,000 to 150. 230,000 minus 150,000. In order for it to go to that, it means that if I originally invested 230, now I only have 150,000 rand invested. What this means is that a portion of this money matured. To mature means we receive the money from the bank. So this is definitely an inflow. Take 230 minus 150, and that is 80,000. Okay, then cash flow from investing activities. The only two things I have left is proceeds from fixed assets and then purchase of fixed assets. So something that I would like to show you. Okay, let me just get a spare paper. Okay, from your knowledge of tangible assets. Now, I know that you do not like tangible assets, but it is in the syllabus, so we have to learn the format, okay? And this will help you. So tangible assets or fixed assets. All you have to do is write down the format and then fill in the figures that you have, okay? So we know that it starts with carrying value at the beginning, then the cost, and then accumulated depreciation. This is in brackets. Then we go to movements. Now my movements comprise of my additions. My additions is if I bought a new asset, the cost of that asset. Then I go to disposal at carrying value, very important, depreciation, right? Then the next part of my format is carrying value at the end, cost, and accumulated depreciation. Okay, now instead of trying to remember this whole thing, right, in a linear form, all you have to do is just write down this fixed asset note somewhere at the side of your page and input the figures that you have. So let's look at the figures that we have. Now you will find the carrying value of your fixed assets in your statement of financial position. Notice it even says fixed assets carrying value. It gives us the carrying value at the beginning of the year and the carrying value at the end of the year. Put it into your note. So the carrying value at the beginning of the year is 2,354,390. I'm going to say 2,354,390. So automatically This part here will fall away because cost minus accumulated depreciation will give me this answer here. And the same with the end, because I have the carrying value. I have the carrying value at the end. It's 2714030. Then let's go to the movements. Now, what occurs under the movements? It's additions. They told me extensions to the existing buildings were completed during the financial year. Okay, so they're not giving me a figure. That is how I know that the additions is my missing figure or my balancing figure, because I don't have any information, right? It goes on to say the fixed asset was sold at a carrying value of 180,000. Now, please remember, when you put it into the note, disposal at carrying value is a minus figure or a figure in brackets, because we are disposing of the assets from your tangible asset knowledge. And depreciation also. This is very important. Please do not forget. Okay, so I'm going to take this figure of 180,000 and I'm going to put it into the note. Then depreciation, where will I get this? From the extract of my income statement, because depreciation is an expense. And here we go, it's 178,000. Now, if I have filled in all of this information, right, according to, let's just wait for it to get in focus. I'm very sorry about this. Okay, if I have filled in all of this information, it is very easy for me to work out the missing information. Sometimes they will give us the additions and they won't give us the disposal, right? All you have to do is fill in this format. Okay, now because I do not have additions, I'm going to start from the bottom and go to the top. Remember, if I'm starting from the bottom and I'm going to the top, that I'm going to do the opposite operation. So I will say 2714030 plus 178,000 plus 180,000 minus 2354390. And what will I get? I will get 717640. Now remember, an addition here is you are increasing your fixed asset. That means, for example, we have purchased a new land or building. In this example, it does say that we did do extensions, okay? So the building got bigger. But how did the building get bigger? We paid for it. A purchase of fixed assets will always, money is leaving your account, will always be an outflow. I'm going to take my figure 717640. Now, please don't be like me and write so big that you don't have space. But I'm going to try and fit in how I got this information. So I said 2714030 plus 178,000 plus 180,000 minus 2354390. Okay, right? So there's so many marks here, but only if you know this format. So please learn the format, okay? And you don't have to worry about movements either, because it's either that we want to know the disposal or we want to know the additions, and then everything else is given. Okay, and then the proceeds from the fixed assets, they already gave it to us, or I can just take it from here from when I inputted my figures. Proceeds is an inflow of 180,000. Okay, if you're still not sure where I got this from, it says fixed assets were sold at carrying value of 180,000. That means when I got rid of this asset, somebody put money into my account of 180,000. Okay, now what can I get? Cash flow from investing activities. Okay, so as I see it in my calculator, as I see it on my paper, I will put it into my calculator. 180,000 plus 717,640 plus 80,000. Oh, sorry, 180,000 minus 717,640 plus 80,000, and I will get an outflow. Notice that there's a minus here, so outflow of 457,640. Okay, then we're going to go to cash generated from operations, but notice that these sections are blocked off, so I don't really have to worry about it. All I have to worry about is tax paid and dividends paid. Now let's do the easier one. The dividends paid is always, right, just a note, okay? It's this year's interim. And where do I get this year's interim from? My retained income note of 78,000. So I'm going to say 78,000 plus last year's final. Where will I get last year's final from? What's another word for final dividend? Shareholders for dividends. Last year we were sitting at 88,000, sorry. Because this 88,000 at the end of the year, I would have paid last year's final. Okay, so all you have to remember is the formula: this year's interim plus last year's final. Okay, so again, it's not the 102,000, it's last year's final. So I'm going to take 78 plus 88 and I'm going to get 166. Now notice interest paid, tax paid, dividends paid. It's paid. It's money leaving our account, so it's all the figures will be in brackets. Now for tax paid, a tip that I have learned recently, and a very good one at that, is to simply just do the SARS income tax ledger account. Now, I know that you do not like ledger accounts, but please, this trick will definitely help you instead of you trying to scratch your head and figure out what does a debit mean, what does a credit mean. Okay, so please listen, pay attention. If you don't get it, pause the video, come back. Let's fill in the amounts. Now, SARS income tax is a liability, okay? A liability increases on the credit side and decreases on the debit side. Let's go look at the balances. So please note that, oh, where am I going to do this? Okay, if SARS has a debit balance, right, it will be a current asset, or the other way around. If SARS is under current assets, it has a debit balance, right? If SARS is under current liabilities, it has a credit balance. Okay, just something for you to note. So let's go to my balance at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to look under 2022. Do I see SARS income tax? Yes, I do. So it says current assets. Current assets, if it occurs under current assets, it means this SARS here has a debit balance. So it has a debit balance of 2110. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say balance brought down is 2110. Okay. And then after that, I am going to fill in the balance at the end. Now it's the same thing. I'm going to look for the balance at the end of the year, right? What is my balance at the end of the year? So I'm going to go here, 2023. Do I see SARS income tax for 2023? Yes, I do. It's under current liabilities of 6,300. So if it's under current liabilities, now I know that that is a credit, okay? So here I will say balance. Now hear me out and pay attention. Of the new year, right? It was 6,300. But what do I notice, or what do I know, is that a balance brought down of the new year will be a balance carried down of the previous year, right? So I'm going to say balance carried down 6,300. Okay, now on this side, I'm going to record the income tax that I paid, or the income tax. From where? A tip. This is the income tax from the income statement. And then my missing figure here will be my bank figure. What is this, guys? It is my tax paid. And then all I'm going to do is work backwards. So let's go and find my income tax. Now notice in the extract of the statement of comprehensive income, they did not give me the income tax, right, specifically. But what did they give me? They gave me the net profit before tax and the net profit after tax. So remember that the net profit before tax, okay, I take that figure and I minus my income tax to give me net profit after tax. This is from the statement of comprehensive income. So let's work out the difference. The net profit before tax was 358,000. The net profit after tax was 264,480. So 358,000 minus 264,480, and that gives me 93,520. I'm going to take 93,520 and put it here. Okay, now I'm going to balance this account, right? And I'm going to work backwards to find out what bank was. Now, which side would be the bigger side? So remember that to balance the account, right, it comes before the balance brought down of the new year. So 2110 and 6,300 is on this side, and then 93,520. So it's obvious. I'm going to drop down the 93,520. Balancing means both sides must equal. 93,520, 93,520. Now I'm going to get the missing side. So if on the debit side of the SARS income tax, this side must equal to 93,520, all I'm going to do in my calculator is say that answer of 93,520 minus 6,300 minus 210, sorry, 2,110, and that is 85,110. How easy is that? Okay, and it saves me so much of time, provided that you do the account exactly the way that I did it, right? You won't have to get any of the SARS or the tax paid wrong. Okay, then in brackets, I'm just going to put here how I got my answer. I took 93,520. I minused 6,300, and then I minused 2,110 to get 85,110, and obviously that's the tax paid. Okay, and we are almost at the last bit, so it's net cash and cash equivalents, right? Now let's look at the cash and cash equivalents balance at the beginning of the year. The only thing that will disrupt this figure is if you have a bank overdraft. Now listen guys, a bank overdraft will always be an outflow. Why will it always be an outflow? Because you spent all of your money and you use the bank's money. That is why you are sitting in an overdraft, okay? So let's go and look at the beginning of the year. Cash and cash equivalents, we have 34,700, okay? Do we have a bank overdraft at the beginning? No, we don't. So this is just going to be 34,700, right? And notice that cash and cash equivalents is under current assets, okay? current assets means that it's an inflow of money. Okay, then cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year, right? The cash and cash equivalents, that means I have 5,000, an inflow of money. But if you go to bank overdraft under current liabilities, you will notice that I am owing the bank 12,750, bank overdraft in brackets or minus, because why? I spent this money. That is why I'm owing the bank. Okay, so to get the cash and cash equivalent at the end, I'm going to say 5,000 minus 37,000. Oh, sorry, 5,000 minus 12,750, and that is minus 7,750. Okay, now to get the net change in cash and cash equivalents, okay, to get the net change in cash and cash equivalents, all you're going to do very simply is ask yourself, at the beginning of the year, right, I was sitting with 34,700 of my money. But at the end of the year, right, I am now owing the bank 7,750, right? That's the bank's money. So in order for me to go from here to here, I spent all of my money and I landed with zero. And then I asked the bank if I can borrow their money, right? So I borrowed a further 7,750. So the amount of money that I have spent is my money of 34,700, and I spent the bank's money of 7,750. So in total I spent 42,450. Okay, right, we are almost done. The debt to equity ratio, very simple. Now this is my non-current liability, or my loan amount is to my equity. Now remember, my equity refers to my shareholders equity, okay? And my shareholders equity is made up of my ordinary share capital note plus my retained income note. So let's go and look for my non-current liability, or my debt for this year. It is 500,000. Okay, so that is 500,000. Okay, sorry, non-current liability over equity, and then my equity over my equity. Remember guys that the right side, I just thought I would put the formula there. I'm sorry that it's squashed. Remember that the right side is always equal to 1. So let's go and look at my shareholders equity. Now remember that I did not have a figure for my retained income. Okay, now we are gonna not focus on 2022, we're only looking at 2023. Okay, because this is the debt to equity ratio for this year. But I know my ordinary share capital, and I worked out my retained income in question 1, right? I worked out my retained income here. So I'm going to take my ordinary share capital of 2,016,000, and then I'm going to go to my retained income figure here, 376,480. Okay, now let's add this. 2,016,000 plus 376,480. That gives me a total of 2,000,000 392 480. The right side is always equal to 1, so I divide by the same thing, 2,392 480. So I'm going to take 500 divided by, and I am going to get 0.2. Okay, for debt to equity ratio, we always use a decimal of 1. 0.2 is to 1. Simple, and it's 3 marks. Okay, and then my net asset value per share, right, that is equal to my shareholders equity over the number of issued shares at year end, right, times 100 cents. Okay, so my shareholders equity, I worked it out here, my ordinary share capital plus my retained income, and then I got the total there of 2,392,480. And then the number of issued shares, remember that I worked out my ordinary share capital note as just a rough working, so everything else can run smoothly. And now I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to say 400,000. So remember, it's the number of shares that are issued at the end of the year, or are in issue at the end of the year. 400,000 minus 120,000 plus 234,920, and that is 514,920. I'm going to take 514,920, I'm going to say times 100. So 234, sorry, 2392 into 14 times 100, and that is equal to 464.6 cents, or you could just say 465 cents, whichever, but you would still get 3 marks. So let me just show you, I forgot to show you with the cash flow where you got marks, but you would get an operation mark here. Okay, if you took the same answer, because you would know that this is the shareholders equity and you transferred it here, you would get an operation mark. Then you would get an accuracy mark for calculating the correct number of shares in issue at the end of the year, and then operation mark if you got one thing right. And then you'd get a mark here, you get a mark here, and then one for the answer. That will give you 3. Okay, and then for the cash flow, let me show you very quickly how you will definitely score 86 marks. So for the dividends paid, not 86, 26, right? So operation mark, tax, they'll give you 1 mark for each. Operation mark, cash flow from investing activities, they gave you an operation mark, right? If you have answers here and at least one of these answers was correct, okay, so for example, if I had proceeds from fixed assets was incorrect, but this and this was correct, or if I had change in financial assets, that was the only thing correct, and this was incorrect, I would get this mark. If I take my calculator and I punch in your numbers and I get that number, we will give you the mark, right? So 180,000, and then I literally get marks for each answer. And how good is that, considering all I needed to do was this note and fill in the figures. Okay, and then I get 2 marks here, operation mark there, cash flow from financing activities, same operation mark, get Changes in loan, 2 marks. Additional shares, you'd get an operation mark for transferring, right? And then the repurchase, you'd get 2 marks. Then oh sorry, you would get 2. Oh gosh, what am I doing? You get 2 marks here. Then an operation mark for working out the correct change beginning, and then 2 marks here, and that's how you would get 26. I hope that this video has helped you and that you will ace cash flow.